right, everybody, welcome back to one of our next to the last sessions today called Ghost Students, Identifying Fraudulent Students and What Colleges Are Doing to Prevent Fraud. And presenting this information to us today is Jennifer Forster from West Virginia University at Parkersburg, and she is joined by two special guests, Teke Brown and Jason Thomas, both special agents in the Office of Inspector General for the U.S. Department of Education. So Jennifer, go ahead and take it away.
I want to tell you about an experience we've had at WVUP, and this is a shout out to all of our community college colleagues. I think we're probably experiencing it more than the competitive entrance colleges. And I also want to give a quick shout out to my staff, Shauna, Sarah, Dylan, and Chelsea, who have had to deal with this and have taken the brunt of everything we've had to do with this. And they've done tremendous work. Teke and Jason, are you there?
We are.
Thank you. Okay. So they cannot be, their image cannot be shown, but they will be presenting at the end to give us a more broad picture of what's going on nationally. So previously, community colleges were dealing with Pell runners. So people would come in and they would sign up, get the Pell Grant, and then they would do well or not do well, and then they go to another college and they get the Pell Grant. We called them Pell runners. That affected that person because they were using their name and identity. The new fraud that's going on are people are taking on fraudulent identities and borrowing money and credit on other people's names. So that's what we're looking at for this. I want to go back and just kind of let you know about some of our new student processes and how they might be different than yours. You get to think about how they might be different than yours and how that might impact advising versus admissions. But a student can apply at our college online for free. Anyone can do it. And as soon as that happens, the information is processed and the information then is processed to the advisor for the advisor to reach out to that student. So admissions and recruiting might not ever see this student if they applied online. And so that's what was happening, and that's why they came to our advisors. And after they've done the application and they're ready to meet with the advisors, they're given a PIN, and it's not a PIN number that you type in to get a code. It's like a PIN to keep them from going any further in the process. So they cannot register on their own without meeting with one of our advisors. And then the advisor chooses to remove the PIN or not. So a lot of our new processes for new students that choose to meet with us only online kind of revolves around this removal of the PIN. We can hold up registration until we have approval. So I'm going to give you a background. This is our story. This has happened not that this summer, but 2 summers ago. One of my academic advisors was setting up an appointment with the student, and the student gave the ID number for a different student. So she was curious why that would happen and went and talked to the advisor of that student. And they said, well, they had already gotten registered and that the phone kept cutting out, and it was an African time zone, and there seemed to be an accent. And it was just kind of a unique experience. It was different. And so they started talking, and they had among themselves, they had 4 of those students. And then another one of my advisors overheard that and said, well, hang on, I've had it too. And so they brought out all the information and brought it to me. And I said, well, this is really weird because when we were getting this information, the financial aid information wasn't connected to it. So it said their FAFSA was not submitted. So we didn't understand what they were trying to give. Are they going to take credits and sell them? We didn't understand. But we got into the information and I looked up their address online. I don't know what compelled me, but I went and I looked, and all of a sudden their houses were for sale. Where they lived were for sale or were vacant. We noticed student data started to pop up that was duplicated. The emergency contacts were the same. The email addresses tended to be the same. And they were all applying for our online only programs. So we knew something was going on. It was weird that, you know, the hairs on the back of your neck start to stick up and you're like, I mean, we got to figure this out. And then we had the weird time zones. They could be anywhere from Chicago to California, and we had the ones from Africa. So we knew we were onto something. We just didn't quite know what it was yet. So here's some of the data, and for your, I guess, see if you've lived this experience, take a look at this data, and somebody want to put into chat what they see that's interesting. I don't know if anybody's put anything in chat. I can't see it. Okay, there we go. Birthdays, deceased, non-traditional, the same email. You guys got it all. So they were going into our child development program, and some of these were 80-year-olds, 79-year-olds. One of them was deceased. That didn't come back till a little bit later. What set us off was the same email. Yeah, and Glenda does have an amazing backyard view. And that happens to be an over $500,000 condo in Alabama, so right on the beach. You can guess why we started to become a little skeptical. And so we knew we needed to do something. Something was going on. Here's some more residences. This one was vacant. This one was sold. It's beautiful. We didn't think anybody going into child development would be living in a house that cost that much. Maybe that was a little presumptuous. And then here was a house that we pretty sure that was actually condemned. They were not allowed to live there. We had one that was an empty lot. So, I mean, we laugh now, but this was really stressful. Here's some data and some implications that we found. And I know it's a lot of data, and I'll try to get through it quickly, but in the fall of 24, we had 36 that we put on a list that we said we think they're fraudulent. 22 were in business administration and 12 were in child development. Of the 36, 20 were able to enroll because they made it through our process. We have a new process and they made it through. I'll go over the process in just a second. 13 were on the unpaid list. So we have some other processes to get rid of students who might not be legitimate, but they didn't pay. They were on the list. They would have been dropped. 2 were dropped for non-attendance. And then 9 were still registered by the end of the semester. 7 of those 9 had at least one early alert. So they were not progressing. They were not good students. And none of those students could register for spring term. And then we get to spring, 64 students. So we've gone really almost doubled in the fraudulent list, and 36 in child development. That's huge. They're targeting that one because that is our only online only program. They don't have to have special permission to get into. Unless it's summer and a lot of our classes are online, then they can take whatever they want. So in this case, 21 were able to enroll. We had some drop between the unpaid list, and I did want to point out 13 of the 14 were in child development. Those were the only ones who made it through to become registered. Again, we had early alerts. We had 3 that we closed their email accounts and Blackboard accounts because of academic fraud. We had 2 that proved to be legitimate, so there's some good news in all of this. But we are all concerned about retention and completion. And of course, our faculty are having kittens because I actually called our IR and said, well, how many new students did we have in child development for the spring of 25? Well, 24. So 54% of those students cannot return because they have an outstanding balance, because we did not allow them to have financial aid because they made it to the fraudulent list. So anybody who made us have any skepticism at all goes onto a list. And if they're on the list, they have to verify with financial aid who they are and follow the regular federal financial aid verification processes. So 54% is really bad news for that program, especially if they have to go under program review. So we've been collecting names, and we can help this faculty member out by saying we believe those students were fraudulent. Let's talk about the real students who were actually coming to class. All right, so this summer, we had some that were able to make it through again. This time they hit business administration. so they can fake take classes for business instead of child development. We had 4 students that were dropped due to ID verification, and I'll show you those in a second, and as well as academic integrity, and none of them were able to register. It should have been fall term. Fall term, we made it possible, and we caught every single person we thought was fraudulent. Now, that doesn't mean that our faculty won't find more through some other ways, but through our processes, we believe that we have found all of them, and that none of them were able to register. So it's work. It's a lot of work, but we got there. So what did we do? These were our processes. All new students that want their PIN released will be required to meet in person or on screen. And so that's a change. You know, when you work for a community college, you do everything you can to get that student enrolled, including possibly allowing them to register through a phone call. We can't do that anymore. They need to be on screen or they need to come in person. When we meet with them on screen, we take a screenshot now. And they go on to our list, and advisors all have access to the list. They can go on and see, is this person unique or is there a picture already out there? Because it's clear this is a scam. It's a big scam. We added the questions. What's your birthday? And they had to say it proper, American, not proper. I don't want to say that, but they had to say it with the month, birthday, day, and year. And we were hearing it day, month, year. And so we knew we were dealing with overseas entities. Yeah. We asked their zip code because one of them actually said, I don't understand what zip code is. So I knew right away that they were not living in America. We asked their phone number. We asked their ID. That's pretty normal stuff. Then we noticed that we were getting paid people who looked like hired actors. And they would read the responses to the questions. So we knew they studied, and we asked, what county do you live in? What high school did you graduate from? Because then they'd have to go into the application a little further to find that information. So we had to be prepared for that. So that was work for us as well. All right, so here's another group activity. I'd like you to meet Ken and Mike, and I'm missing his name. I think it's Cody. So pretty sure this is the same individual. Pretty sure the same artwork is in this picture, and this picture. And we've got Eric and we've got Richard. So all 5 of those students were given an ID hold and said, hey, we believe there's an issue with identity fraud. If you can come in and show us your federal state ID and meet with me in person, we know you live less than 2 hours away. If you can come in, I'd be happy to remove the hold and I'll get you registered for classes right away. Not one student has contacted me. Not one has contacted me to come in and meet with me. And then the other thing is this summer, because we knew they were studying those questions and they kept coming at us. We started asking for copies of their ID. And I want to introduce you. I believe his name is Damien unofficially. And if you would like to look at your ID and see how clear the picture is on your ID, you will see there's a distinct difference. I live in Ohio. My picture's in black and white. So we had a feeling this was also an issue. Also told him that until he came in to meet with us, he would have an ID hold. All he had to do was reach out and we could meet. He was also local and no one reached out. So we feel pretty confident that these are truly people portraying other individuals and using their credit to borrow Pell Grants and money. So again, why are they doing this? They're getting Pell Grant, and they're getting possibly the higher education grant from West Virginia. They are borrowing another individual's credit. They're getting loans out in their name. So it's about $7,000 a semester that they've been able to pull out of somebody else's credit. And that's a real shame. That's the real damage in this, is somebody out there, their name's being used to do this. Where they get this data, I don't know. I'm going to let Teke and Jason maybe talk to that, but it is It's scary, and we all start checking our credit scores pretty regularly now. The other impact that we have is fraudulent students are filling needed seats in our online courses. I've had to keep begging instructors to add courses because they ran out of seats, and we knew that some of these students were probably fraudulent. Access to directory information. So our information about where you can find us is hidden behind a sign-in. Once they could do that, they can find us and they can email us directly, and they do. That also takes all the time the staff does. We've got advising appointments, the times they register and schedule, and they don't show up, and then they show up, and then all the time it takes to report the information, uploading the pictures, all the time the faculty put into grading the assignments, because they will portray themselves as students up until financial aid is released. And once that's released, they'll just disappear. All the early alerts that come in from the instructors, and then all of my staff who respond to early alerts, trying to reach out to those students, all the financial aid packages that were created based on the income of this real person that somebody else is submitting in. Also access to the .edu, so they can get access on software and computers, Spotify, YouTube, all those student benefits they could get to. And then the last one that's probably one of, I'm sorry, a little distraction. The last one is the scariest, is Blackboard access to other students. And this is what we noticed over the summer. So I want to show you this. If you want to read through this, I'm going to check the chat. Okay, for those of you who made it through, you probably also saw that for $50 a week, they will do the coursework for them. And for $100, they'll do all the classes. And they also included a copy of their grade book scores, just to show them that they got really good grades in GBUS and history when they were targeting a student in an education class. So I thought that was a little funny. And it's a little scary, because now they're reaching out to our students and trying to say, hey, I'll do your schoolwork for you. And then that student, even if they did take them up on it, they can't come back to us to complain. Because if they did, then they're going to be charging with academic dishonesty, because they can't hire somebody to do their schoolwork. So nobody would ever complain about that. So as soon as we saw some of these, we closed their accounts, and they were given a hold that they had to come and talk to me. And again, they did not come and talk to me. So this is what makes me nervous, because we want to protect our students, and we had to find whatever we could do to do that. And it just makes you feel really vulnerable. So I'm going to turn it over to Teke and Jason, and they can say what they've seen with national trends, or they can present what they know with national trends.
Thank you, Jennifer. Before I get into it real quick, I just want to say what an awesome job Jennifer and her team have done. We in our line of work really appreciate the effort that you all put into it. I'd like to tell you that it makes it easier for us. Unfortunately, it doesn't, and I'll get into that in a second. But I appreciate the work, though. Here's the thing. Nationally, this is across the board. We're seeing an uptick in this type of fraud from graduate level, because I think someone in the chat was talking about AI. They're using ChatGPT and things like that to create all the necessary paperwork and examples that you would need to for a graduate program. In the old days, we would see like faxed and photocopied transcripts from high schools. Now there are online services that offer what they call movie quality props. And that's how they kind of get around the legalese of it, because they're like, hey, we just make movie props. And you can buy those, and they look real. A lot of times they're picking schools that they know you don't have access to through a national database for transcripts, so they'll mail them to you, or have an agent mail them to you. And then some of the more sophisticated ones, especially at the graduate level, they're doing things like paying a service where that service gives them an address, will answer the phone as though they live at the address, will accept all kinds of things like they're an actual person who lives there, and that's so they can get bank accounts in the States. So what we're seeing with this is it's not what we traditionally had over the past decade, which was more an individual happened to get access to social security numbers and try to do this fraud. We're seeing a lot now is transnational crime groups, where you've got a money mule in the States where you all are depositing money into that person's account, and then they're flooding it back overseas to the actual handlers. So the linchpin for us going forward is banking accounts. So if you still have an bursar's office, or if you're working with a third-party payment processor, knowing the bank account numbers and knowing the routing numbers and looking for trends there will be a big help. And you stopping them and me going after them. Because one of the things that we want to point out is the attempt is as good as the crime for what we do. So if we stop them from getting to you, or you stop them getting in, that's awesome. But they're going to keep trying. And the only way we can stop them from keep trying is if we start running out and grabbing up these money mules. So if you have that ability and can report that to us, awesome. And we have, if you're worried about messaging and things like that, we have secure protocols that's acceptable for HIPAA, FERPA, and banking information, where we can get that back and forth. And worst case scenario, Jason and I cover all of Western New York, all of Western Pennsylvania, and all of West Virginia. So we will drive out to meet you. Likewise, if you want to have a sit down with us and go over your policies and procedures, we're willing to come out and sit down with you and talk about stuff. But realize as the federal government, we're not directing you. We're only providing advice. So those are the big things that we're seeing right now. And like I said, I'd love to tell you that this is kind of isolated, but it's not. It's at all levels, at all schools that accept Title IV funding.
So Jennifer, we have a lot of stuff in the chat, and we all kind of figured that this would be the one that people got super interested in. So I'll read it just for the recording. The first one is from Sam Holiski. I know at the state level, Medicare fraud has a state-funded fraud control unit. If community colleges and universities are now having to use their resources to control for fraud, is this potentially an opportunity to request grant funding from the state or through HEPC to fund efforts to identify and prevent fraud of West Virginia Higher Ed Grant and Pell Grant funds? I guess I would add to that, how much of this is HEPC aware of?
I believe they are aware because we've brought it up to them, and my vice president has been instrumental in creating these policies that we had. I think they're aware, but it takes a while to get things moving, and we can't wait. I do know that the financial aid, our Department of Education sent out to all financial aid offices that they would be doing more verification through the FAFSA application. I don't think it's started. I think it's going to start this fall for the students that are going to start next fall. But I think that's coming. So that's more administrative help for us. But I can tell you that our college is looking at a customer relations manager that also says that they can pull out 98% of the fraudulent students for us. We will continue to do our processes because there's still that 2%, and I don't want to break anybody's credit by letting somebody through just because we weren't rigorous in it. But I'm hopeful that there are some other aids, because this is exhausting. And as advisors, we want to help people. We want everybody to go to school. We want them all to stay. And it's a bit disheartening to feel so skeptical now. And so we would really like to get back just to the business of being really good welcomers to the college and getting them started and helping them on their journey. I'm hopeful that it's coming, but I'm sure they're aware. I just think it's going to take a while. And like I said, they're targeting community colleges because we have open admissions, and we also tend to have online programs that are available. So, and it sounds like Teke is saying that the graduate programs are being targeted as well, probably because they are also online. And he did mention that they're creating all their background documents. We did receive a fake transcript from San Jose State. They were going to transfer to our college, and there was something that was weird, and so our registrar actually called the college and said, "Can you explain what this is? Because this looks different." And they said, "This student's never been here." And then, so that person also had a hold. We're told they were getting a hold, and they can get that off if they came to meet with me, and they still haven't come to meet with me. So our track records get it pretty good because nobody's come to meet with me to get that hold off. I should have told you earlier when we had the, let's see if I can get back to it. No, there it is. On here with the G-Bus and the History 152. So over the summer, the student was sending this email out with these images of their grade book. And the student who was sending the email wasn't even a student anymore. So that was the first clue. But they, our Blackboard person, instructional technology, they went out and they found this student that had these grades at that moment in time. And they both got that hold. They were both removed from their email accounts and the Blackboard. So we're trying to be as clever as we can, and we think that they're sophisticated, but unless you're, yeah, they're not that much. And you saw from the same email 4 times and the age and the deceased. That was the first time we had gotten older ones was over the summer. Most of them had been 25 to 42 when they did it, and nobody was fresh out of high school that we received. All right, what else do we have for questions? How did they get the email? The email came from the Blackboard website, the Blackboard account. On Blackboard, you can get your classmates' emails and you can directly email them. You can't do an announcement, but they can do a direct email to them. So that was how that person got that email. How often do they use an AI person to apply on the phone or video or both? Deepfakes are quite common. So we don't do anything on the phone anymore. I don't know if they're fake in the video. I don't know. Teke, have you seen that?
No, we haven't seen the use of AI in that fashion. Like I said, it's mostly been at the graduate level. And what we see is the fraud at the graduate level is a much more sophisticated group than the undergraduate level. The undergraduate, or as you experienced, are kind of brute force, if you will, where the graduate level are more finesse. And they'll use a lot more technology. One of the things, and I know we're talking to advisors, but one of the things that tech people like to talk about are IP addresses. And that used to be a big thing for a period of at least a decade. Where you're able to say, if I can get an IP address, I can find the guy. With the advent of what they call IPv6, they no longer have static IP addresses very often. So even if they're running a VPN, we still have a hard time linking somebody to an IP address, which goes back to what I said earlier. For us on the catch side, we're looking at accounts. We really need to find account numbers, which isn't to say we can't find them still, but that's the easiest way for us to get to them.
I can't answer if this was conveyed in admissions or recruiting conferences because I haven't been to once. Does anybody have any comment to that? Has anybody been talking about it?
So I'll jump in real quick on the OIG side. So we have been remiss in this area, predominantly because we focused on liaising with the financial aid advisors, because that was where it tended to get to be caught in the old days. Because again, they could say, hey, I've got 15 people from the same IP address. That's a warning. I see that. Now though, like I said, it really is becoming a team effort. If you're earnest about trying to stop it, you're going to need everybody from admissions and financial aid and your IT department all working together to create a team to prevent it. So the game has changed.
So glad you said that because we knew something was going on and we were worried that we weren't doing everything we could. And so we invited in Teke and Jason to come meet with us to run our process past them and see what else can we do. And they gave us some feedback about checking for IP addresses and doing some of that. So we had our an CIO there, so our information technology supervisor, our 2 of our vice presidents, financial aid, myself, our business office, all of us came to the table and met with Teke and Jason. And after that, we formed a group. Then we meet periodically to talk about maybe some new things that we're seeing. And I constantly email anybody as soon as we get a new fraudulent one so that they know that we've added them to the list and they can be on the lookout. So it does. Now, community colleges, we are smaller. We are generalists. We kind of know everybody's business. So it might make it harder if you're bigger, but for us, we've had really good luck with working with our counterparts at the campus.
I'll say one thing for the bigger schools, kind of the common trend that we see on our end, is, like you said earlier, there may be homework and it may be that the homework is appropriate. The replies are appropriate up until a certain point, and then they just stop showing up. But traditionally what we've seen is the replies, when you start looking at it, the homework assignment might be all right, but the replies are nonsensical, or the homework assignments are nonsensical and the replies make no sense. So those are kind of some of the things that when you talk about the holistic approach, faculty, the professors, if they're aware of this is what fraud looks like, they can report this to us as part of an early prevention process.
Yep, and we've talked to our faculty recently, and that's exactly what we've suggested, is to make sure there's a meaningful assignment at the beginning, that you're engaging with them in a way, especially for those online classes where they don't have to show up at any point in time, that it's all discussion and homework and things like that, but trying to find a way to winnie out the people that were there. And then the check for writing that sounds like AI. We've seen AI writing. We know what it kind of looks like. You're not, and I would say entry-level English and speaking at a graduate level. So usually they can pick them out there. One person was online doing their discussion, introduced themselves, but it was on somebody else, another student's account. And so both of them were pulled from the class because but they're my cousin. Well, come on in and prove it. And that they did not come in to prove it. So they do things like that, but we would not have found that out had we not worked with the faculty to look at that. So we're learning as we go. Now, as far as admissions process to add there, I know that I believe Marshall, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, their application process added in a third-party verification process. That's what we're asking for, but it's expensive. That's why the suggestion to go through HEPC it's a valid and good suggestion for us to see if we can get some help at the community college to do that. And our admissions process, it is very quick. So they can apply at night and our staff will turn around and our advisors will be calling the next day saying, hey, do you want to set up a meeting? My advisors are pretty awesome. And they do that. And that's just community colleges, we do that. So any other questions? I'm going to post a link to a video from PBS that I thought was kind of wrapped up the issue very nicely. But I also have some questions to find out what's going on throughout the state. So I don't know if we want to do this through chat or if we want to raise a hand and call on them. Maybe that would be the best if you could raise your hand, but I would really like to know what's happening on your campus. So if anybody wants to raise their hand, that would be great. Okay, Kathy, let's hear it. If you want to take yourself off mute and just let us know.
I don't know that this is totally relevant to the campus piece, but I ran into this with my dissertation, that I was trying to recruit teachers for an online workshop. And I started noticing just some suspicious things. And one of the other things that caught me, even though they weren't using the exact same email, was that the way that the email was formatted was exactly the same for multiple. In that case, I did have access to the IP, and I could see that the location was in other places, and found even 2 hubs in the United States where I was seeing those. But it was even just like the way they put the names in was exactly the same on those accounts, and that kind of raised a red flag. So I don't know how helpful that is, but I appreciate this information. I don't have any online programs, but I know we have some in our college that we don't think we've seen that, but
I think you're right on target though. And I saw Dylan shaking his head because he had it this summer where the same email shows up several times the same way. And then you're like, well, okay, here comes another bunch of fraudulent ones. Or Amanda, what can you add?
Well, I was just notified by our admissions department the other day that we did have a fraudulent student somehow get in and get registered for a couple of online classes. When I looked up the gentleman to reach out to him to say, gosh, you never met with an advisor, and to see if he meant to register with Tech because he was 60 years old and looked like he lived in Morgantown. So then why was he taking classes from Tech? So it was interesting. Of course, the person never responded to me, but it's now on our radar, and admissions is looking into this along with the CFO. So
by the way, if you think you have a fraudulent student, you can report it to the OIG hotline or directly to Jason and I. I'll tell you, the OIG hotline deals with everything from people who think that the Department of Education has space aliens in the basement, to whistleblower complaints. So they're pretty backlog. But again, you can reach out to Jason and I directly, and we can take care of your reporting requirements for that. I've linked our phone numbers in there in the chat as well. Yeah, it was a call. But I've also linked centralops.net. So centralops.net is an investigative tool that we use. It's free to use. You can use it, I think, up to 40 or 50 times in a day. What it does is if you have an email address domain that you don't recognize, you can put in the at xi.ku.whatever, and it will come back, and a lot of times it'll tell you where that service provider exists. So we find a lot of times Kenya, China, India. Also, sometimes the service provider will have redacted all of their information, which generally is concerning for us. It's not to say that it's not legitimate. It's just generally concerning for us that we can't find any information about who owns that service. And since we can't find information about it, we can't do a warrant or get a subpoena for the information. So that's why it's concerning for us. But for you all, like I said, if you're questioning where does this email thing exist and you're looking for one more node to make a decision, this may help you.
How many other campuses have run into this? I'd like to hear from you. Sarah.
We had a one instance in our College of Business, but only one, and we were just sifting through it a little bit and working with our IT department and a few others to see what we should do. The advisors were on the front line, the same as yours, and we're very concerned, and the information we heard today has been very encouraging. Good. It's shocking, it's awful, but we know that we're not alone and have a few more things to use here. So I think that's helpful, and we'll share it with our other departments too.
Mark?
Yeah, the whole discussion about how IP addresses are no longer something that we can count on. First thing I thought of wasn't academic or fraud from a monetary point of view, but our online testing center and how we use IP addresses to make sure that students are actually there at the testing center taking their exams. I have very little experience with any of this, but I was just concerned immediately about just how secure our remote testing facilities.
So IP spoofing is possible. It's a little bit more sophisticated than what we deal with typically. But your IT folks in general, at least in our experience, Jason, if you've got something different, they're pretty good at catching the spoofs or the VPNs. Because that's the other thing that you'll find a lot of times is they're using a VPN to access the school. And again, as the government, I can't direct anybody to do anything in this instance, but yeah, you know, some schools are going to, hey, you can't access us from a VPN.
Any other schools that have, oh, you just have more, Mark?
No, I just said thank you.
Oh, okay, Katie?
Hey, yeah, so I'm at Mount West. We have had this going on for a couple semesters now. What we started to do was we do Zoom or in-person appointments for new students, and so they do have to show their face either on camera or come in person. But we also have some other flags in place. Our admissions processor is awesome to kind of check and see like random addresses or like phone numbers and emails that kind of look strange. So then we'll also, before they even get to schedule an appointment with us, we'll also have our student ambassadors call those phone numbers that are associated with their accounts just to say like, hey, you know, just want to confirm, you know, we'd love to get you scheduled, etc. And that has also helped kind of alleviate some of those fake students getting to actual advising appointments.
That's interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
We didn't think about that, having people call before. I think our admissions do, but we're turning them over from the application so quickly. Maybe we need to delay in between some of that.
Yeah, we have the same process. I mean, we admit pretty quickly, but our admissions processor, like I said, is pretty awesome at starting to see some of those red flags now that we've had a consistent amount of fraudulent students come through. She can kind of pick and see, hey, this high school looks strange, or these addresses don't match up, things like that.
Keela, would you like to comment?
Hi, I'm underneath Katie. I'm also at Mount West. I feel like one of the biggest things that they do catch is, so we don't have specifically online programs, but when they fill out the application, it lists the programs in alphabetical order. So if we get like an influx of like business administration, they're going through and picking the very first one, and that's one of the big indicators we see.
I love it. I love it. Maybe that's why there's so many on ours. Our Joy.
I just wanted to make a comment that even with larger schools who may have different admissions processes, the national trend in the face of declining enrollment is students wanting more online asynchronous courses and entire programs that are online. And a lot of traditionally in-person schools are trying to meet that demand. So as we face another enrollment cliff in West Virginia within the next 3-ish to 5 years, that's going to be the security of it is something we're going to have to think about, because to your point early on, we want every student that we can get and we want to keep them here. And so it's easy to just not think about what, you know, whether a student is coming from another area or not, because with online education, they can come from anywhere.
Has anybody else got any practices they've been using to identify? Or anybody else using a third-party verification process? Anybody gonna go back and talk to their supervisors and say, hey, what are we doing about this?
Lacey does have a really great question in the comments about whether anyone has run, and this is I can see this with some Appalachian areas. Has anyone run into issues with a student not having a webcam or something like that? I could see some resistance saying it causes a barrier to getting students registered.
We have had that, and we kind of say, how about a phone? We can video to your phone. We just don't do it anymore. We can't. And we can say, well, you know, you're welcome to come in, but you know, there are some places in West Virginia, it takes a good 4 hours to get to. But we can see where they live. So if they're close enough and they refuse, then we would say, well, come on in person. I'm happy to meet with you. I'll make all the welcome I can give you in person. But I don't think we sent anyone. I really feel like if there was truly somebody who was in this situation, they would complain a lot more. You know, they just go away when we say, no, you have to. Lacey.
Yeah, I was just curious about that because the situation we had over the summer, like we talked to somebody on the phone multiple times. So like even just doing a phone call anymore is not enough. And we have online students that literally I've never seen their face because we just work through email or phone. And, you know, previously that was fine, but seems like it's not anymore.
Yeah, true. And I hate to live in this skeptical and cynical world, but that's where we're at right now. Until the FAFSA processes are third-party verified or somebody's checking on the information they're sending them, it's going to be an issue. Here's the thing though, is they still have that person's data. So they're using that individual's real information. It's their real social security number, their real address. I think they change up their emergency information so that we can call directly to somebody who would actually know who it is.
A lot of times they do. That's the trend we see. And I was going to comment on that. Even if you're stopping them, we still want you to report it to us, because what we see is that same individual shows up at 5 or 6 different schools, right? And on the back end, when we're running our investigation, we'll, you know, catch the bad guy and we'll see, hey, there are 10 different schools sending refunds to this one account. And this guy has like 100 people or 200 people's identities, and he just keeps rinsing and repeating at different universities. So if you are coming across that, please reach out to us. Let us know. If you're not comfortable talking to me for whatever reason, or my partner Jason, you can always use the hotline. We have an online hotline as well that you can submit information to. But the big thing there is, on our end, once we have it in our database, we know that person is been victimized. We can keep tabs on it. The other thing is, if you get somebody who reaches out to you and says somebody stole my identity, is going to class there, you know, if you have a police department, that's awesome. If you don't, report it. Best you can have them do is go to the FTC identitytheft.gov website, and then report to us, because part of getting that process, part of getting their student loans taken care of, unwound, that aren't in their names, is going through us. So, you know, even if you get one that you turn away, please provide us with that information.
Well, appreciate your attention, and if anybody wants to reach out to us any further, please do. Teke and his partner have been very approachable for us as we dealt with this, and we've gone forward with the assurance that we won't get in trouble as a college. So what we're doing is working. It is probably the best that we can do, and they have said that what we're doing will keep us out of financial aid jail. So.
That is correct. You are meeting your statutory requirements.
Thank you so much to our special agents, Teke Brown and Jason Thomas, and to Jennifer Forster for shocking us all with this information and providing some really good data, and some things to think about as we are, of course, moving forward into the future. I liked the way that Teke referred to in the past, which was probably literally just last year. And again, the connections that you might need to make, and if you want to reach out to speakers, all of that information will be available to you after the conference, and we will send that out. We will have that uploaded fairly quickly and let you know by email when it's ready.